If you disappeared today and returned just 7 days later, would anyone notice a difference in you, or would they say you haven't changed at all? What if in just 1 week you could become so disciplined, so intentional, so focused, that even your shadow doesn't recognize you anymore? Most people believe their biggest battle is with the outside world. They blame time, money, lack of opportunity, or even fate. But the truth is rarely out there. The real enemy, it's the version of yourself that you've unconsciously agreed to be. The one who makes the same excuses, who reacts instead of responds, who stays stuck in yesterday's decisions. The greatest resistance you'll face doesn't come from the universe, it comes from the part of you that is afraid of evolving. It whispers, "You've always been this way, why change now?" That familiar voice is not your guide, it's your cage. The familiar version of you is not evil, it's simply habitual. It wakes up at the same time, thinks the same thoughts, feels the same limitations, and relives the same emotional cycles every single day. This internal pattern, running like background code, creates your identity without your permission. It convinces you that this is just who I am. And because it feels natural, you never question it. But familiarity is not the same as truth. Just because you've repeated something long enough to feel comfortable doesn't mean it's serving your potential. In fact, what feels safe is often the very thing slowing you down. Real transformation doesn't start with motivation, it starts with confrontation. You must confront the comfort. You must sit with the hard truth that the you people know, respect, and interact with may only be a diluted version of what's possible. That realization isn't meant to create shame. It's meant to create urgency. To understand that the person you've been, while maybe kind, loyal, intelligent, is also someone who's allowed distractions to steal time, fears to kill dreams, and doubts to hold back momentum. And that version of you doesn't get to come with you where you're going. Imagine you had to introduce yourself to your highest self, the version of you with laser focus, relentless discipline, powerful energy, and unshakable clarity. What would that version of you think of your current habits? What would they remove from your routine? What thoughts would they refuse to entertain? Now imagine that version of you watching your daily decisions. Would they nod in approval or shake their head in silence? That kind of self-reflection is uncomfortable, but that's the point. Growth begins the moment comfort ends. If your current identity doesn't feel friction, then you're not pressing against your limits, you're sleeping inside them. To become unrecognizable in 1 week, you must rebel against the autopilot. That means disrupting what's routine. If you usually start the day scrolling, wake up and stretch. If you procrastinate workouts, train at sunrise. If you let fear dictate your silence, speak boldly. The goal is not to do something extraordinary once the goal is to consistently make unfamiliar decisions until they rewire your identity. Every time you do the opposite of what the old you would do, you chip away at that past self. And soon, those fragments fall away, revealing something sharper, stronger, and more intentional underneath. There's a reason people stay the same for years. It's not because change is impossible, it's because they're loyal to who they've been. They cling to old stories. I'm not a morning person. I've always struggled with consistency. That's just how I am. But those aren't facts, they're unchallenged narratives, and narratives can be rewritten. Not over a year, not in a decade, but in a focused, intense 1-week war against the predictable self. That week won't be easy, but it will be clarifying. You'll come face to face with the habits, thoughts, and comforts that have hidden your greatness. And once you see the enemy clearly, you can never unsee it again. There's a hidden battle that begins each morning long before the world wakes up. It's silent, invisible, but real. You don't see it coming. It doesn't knock, It simply arrives. Doubt, that soft, familiar voice that tells you to wait, to rest a little longer, to push your goals until tomorrow, but there's a strategy to beating it, and it's simpler than you think. Wake up before it does. Rise before it gets a chance to speak. Act before it gains strength, because if you delay, even by a few moments, doubt grows teeth, and those teeth sink deep. Your first decision in the morning defines your relationship with yourself. When you hit snooze, it's not just a button, it's a signal to your subconscious that you don't keep promises to yourself, that comfort wins, that your emotions decide, not your values. But when you rise, especially when you don't want to, you break the chain. You disrupt the pattern. You become someone who moves even when there's no applause, no motivation, no guarantee. And in that decision, a new identity is born, quietly, powerfully, unshakably. Doubt is patient. It doesn't need to arrive with a roar. It slips in when you hesitate. It waits in that 5-second pause between intention and action. That pause is where most dreams die, not in failure but in hesitation. And the only way to win is to eliminate the pause entirely. Wake, move, act, before the brain has time to second guess, before fear gets dressed, before excuses lace up their shoes. Momentum is a weapon, and early momentum is the sharpest blade. Think about the psychology of the morning. In those first few minutes, your mind is soft clay. What you feed it, it absorbs. So when you delay, the first message you send is, "I'm not ready for today." But when you rise early deliberately, intentionally, without negotiation, the message is, "I own this day." That message is not just mental fluff. It affects posture, speech, tone, and productivity. It builds quiet pride, the kind of pride that doesn't need to be seen. It's the kind that builds inner strength and integrity, the kind that rewires your nervous system. In a world where most people sleep until the last possible second, you separate yourself not by talent, but by timing. Rising early isn't about romanticizing the sunrise. It's about gaining hours the world throws away. It's about preparation, clarity, head starts. You gain space, mental space, to design your day before the chaos begins. You think better because you're not reacting. You feel stronger because you've already done the hard thing. And most importantly, you build a small, unshakable win before anyone else is even conscious. But here's the truth. It's not about the time on the clock. It's about who you are when no one's watching. Rising early is symbolic. It's a refusal to be average. A declaration that your future matters more than your momentary comfort. You don't wake up early for discipline alone. You wake up to meet yourself, the version of you that is decisive, focused, clear, before the phone starts buzzing, before the world's demands flood in, before anyone gets to write your story. You pick up the pen. Look around you right now, not metaphorically, literally. What do you see? Is your space clear or cluttered? Does it feel peaceful or chaotic, energizing or exhausting? Most people underestimate this truth. Your environment is not separate from you. It is a mirror of you. It reflects your current mindset, your priorities, your discipline, your self-respect. And if you want to change your life in 1 week, you must start with the space that surrounds you, because the world outside shapes the world inside. You cannot create clarity in chaos. The books on your shelves, the tabs open on your browser, the energy of the people you allow into your space, the music in your ears, the posters on your walls, the apps on your phone. They're not random. They are signals that reinforce your current identity or sabotage it. Most people are trying to transform their lives without touching the environments that hold their habits in place. That's like trying to plant new seeds in contaminated soil. It doesn't matter how powerful the seed is. If the soil is toxic, the growth will die. Think about it. You say you want focus, yet your room is loud with distraction. You say you want discipline, but your home is filled with temptations. You say you want peace, but you keep inviting chaos into your life through screens, noise, and people who drain your energy. You can't out-discipline your surroundings forever. Willpower is not limitless. Eventually, your environment wins, and in most cases it already has. If your environment encourages delay, you will delay. If it encourages growth, you will grow. It's not personal, it's structural. So ask yourself, does my environment match the future I'm trying to build? If not, change it, ruthlessly. Start small. Clean your room not just for hygiene, but for clarity. Organize your digital space, delete the apps that steal your attention. Curate your social media, follow only what feeds your future. Audit your circle, minimize exposure to those who mock ambition or normalize mediocrity. Because every object, every notification, every interaction is either friction or fuel. Either resistance or reinforcement, and you cannot afford friction in a week of transformation. When you begin to change, your surroundings will feel like they're pulling you back. That's not a sign you're doing it wrong, that's a sign you're finally moving. The old environment recognizes the shift, and it resists. The clutter feels louder, the distractions more tempting, even the silence feels uncomfortable. Why? Because you're shedding an old skin, and environments are loyal to old skins. They're built to preserve your past self, but you're not here to be preserved. You're here to evolve, to become unrecognizable. And that means redesigning everything around you to support who you're becoming, not who you've been. The beautiful part, environments can be reprogrammed. What once triggered laziness can become a temple of focus. What once distracted can be replaced by what drives. But you must do it consciously. Nothing changes automatically. You must choose what stays and what goes, what remains and what's removed. Your space is your strategy. Your atmosphere is your accountability partner. If your environment is clean, intentional, quiet, and empowering, you don't need motivation. The space itself will pull you forward. Transformation is not only about what you start doing, it's also about what you stop feeding. If you truly want to become unrecognizable in 1 week, then every moment must become a conscious decision between two paths, the one that reinforces who you've been, and the one that creates who you are becoming. Every decision is food, every habit is fuel. You are either feeding the past or feeding the future, and you cannot do both. The version of you that procrastinates, gets distracted, avoids discomfort, and waits for inspiration, that version is not going to vanish on its own. It must be starved. You cannot expect to rise if you continue giving energy to what keeps you stuck. If the old you lives on fast food, feed your body clean fuel. If the old you spends hours scrolling, delete the apps. If the old you reacts emotionally, practice silence. The old version thrives on reaction and routine. The new version survives on discipline and design. Here's the truth. Your life right now is built on your most consistent behaviors, not your best intentions. You may want to be stronger, wiser, more focused, but that version won't grow unless you actively deprive the behaviors that conflict with it. You must create friction for the old self. Make it difficult for it to survive. Hide the remote, clear the junk food, turn off the autoplay, reduce access to temptation. You're not being extreme, you're being strategic. You're cutting the energy lines that feed your lowest patterns. Starving the old doesn't mean punishing yourself. It means becoming conscious of where your energy goes. Energy is a limited resource, and most people give it away like it's infinite. 1 hour watching random videos is 1 less hour building your mind. 1 conversation with a toxic person is 1 less conversation with your future. 1 skipped workout is not about fitness, it's about the message it sends to your subconscious. It's okay to fold when it's uncomfortable. That message multiplies. It becomes your operating system, and your identity follows. On the other side of this, you must feed the new behaviors, new rituals, new thoughts, Not once or twice, but daily, rhythmically, intentionally. Feed your mind with wisdom, not noise. Feed your body with movement, not excuses. Feed your discipline with structure, not chaos. In just 1 week of focused repetition, these new inputs begin to override the old programming. They may not erase it completely, but they weaken its grip. Your mind begins to associate pride with action, not passivity. Progress with effort, not ease. Understand this. Change doesn't happen in a vacuum. You don't just become a better version of yourself by thinking about it. Change happens when you starve the identity that kept you ordinary and feed the identity that makes you extraordinary. That requires sacrifice. It requires decisiveness. It requires doing things you don't feel like doing, even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. That's how the new you is born, quietly, not in a dramatic moment, but in a series of small, consistent, private wins. People chase mindset. They want focus, confidence, and emotional control. They look for hacks to think sharper, be calmer, stay consistent. But what most overlook is the most direct access point to mental mastery, the body. If the mind is the command center, the body is the instrument that obeys. But here's the secret. When the instrument becomes strong, responsive, and disciplined, it trains the mind. You don't always think your way into action. Sometimes you act your way into thinking. And that's why, if you want to become unrecognizable in just 1 week, you start with the body. Your body holds emotional memory. It remembers laziness. It remembers hesitation. It remembers the days you said tomorrow and didn't follow through. These patterns live in your nervous system, and until you physically disrupt those patterns, not with thoughts, but with movement, you stay trapped in them. The fastest way to break doubt is not journaling or talking about your goals. It's to sweat. It's to push your limits physically, because when you do, your mind realizes something. We don't quit anymore. That realization begins a chain reaction of mental rewiring. Discipline doesn't start in the brain. It starts in the muscles. When you choose to train, especially when it's hard, you create resistance inside the body. That resistance sharpens attention. It humbles the ego. It builds resilience. A disciplined body becomes a physical anchor in a world of mental chaos. On the days when your emotions are loud and your thoughts are messy, your body will still remember the reps. It will remember the routine. It will carry the mind when the mind feels too weak to carry itself. And that is power. You don't need a gym membership to start this process. You don't need supplements or a perfect program. You need commitment. You need to move daily, consistently, with presence. Bodyweight workouts, running, stretching, martial arts, walking with intentional breathing. The type doesn't matter nearly as much as the intensity and intentionality. What matters is the ritual. The agreement you make with yourself. I move every day. I train my body because my mind depends on it. This physical ritual becomes a spiritual practice, one that anchors your identity in strength, not softness. People often say, I just don't feel like myself lately. What they really mean is, I've been living too much in my head and not enough in my body. The body is where presence lives. The body is where instincts sharpen. The body is where tension is released, where energy is restored, where confidence is built. A weak, neglected body sends signals of fatigue, insecurity, and indecision to the brain. But a strong, energized, mobile body sends the opposite: clarity, power, readiness. And in that state, you don't hesitate, you don't doubt, you execute. Every drop of sweat is a message. It tells the old self, you're no longer welcome here. It tells the new self, I'm willing to work for you. Every time you feel the burn, the tightness, the shaking muscles, you're not just transforming your physique, you're transforming your belief system. You're proving, through action, that you are becoming someone different. That proof is undeniable. It lives in your breath, in your posture, in the way you walk into a room. You don't have to convince yourself with affirmations. Your body becomes the affirmation. Your words are not just sounds, they are blueprints. They are small, verbal contracts between who you are and who you are becoming. What you say, even in casual moments, shapes how you think, what you believe, and how others treat you. Most people don't realize that the way they talk is the reason they stay the same. But if you truly want to become unrecognizable in 1 week, the transformation must include your language, because your vocabulary is either validating your past or constructing your future. Every time you say, "I'm not good at that," you plant a flag in limitation. Every time you joke, "I'm lazy," or "I'm always late," your brain takes note. The subconscious doesn't recognize sarcasm, it simply records, and repetition turns recording into reality. These small phrases might feel harmless, but they carry energy. They set the tone, they reinforce identity. The more you speak as your old self, the harder it becomes to break free from that version. But when you begin to speak like the person you want to become, something shifts internally first, and then externally. This doesn't mean you fake confidence. It means you speak intentionally. You replace words of weakness with words of strength. You stop saying, "I can't," and you start saying, "I'm working on it." You stop saying, "I'll try," and start saying, "I'm committed." You drop the language of doubt and pick up the language of decision, because your speech is a mirror of your mindset. Weak language reflects a weak identity. Strong language builds a strong one. And when your words match your goals, your actions begin to align automatically. Watch how high performers speak. There's precision in their language. They don't dwell in indecision. They don't speak in circles. They're clear, they're concise, and above all, they speak with self-respect. That clarity creates momentum. Why? Because your nervous system responds to certainty. If your words are always soft, hesitant, or full of disclaimers, your body responds with hesitation too. But when your words are sharp and certain, your body follows. Your energy changes, your posture adjusts, you start showing up as someone who believes what they say and, more importantly, lives what they say. It's not just about how you talk to others, it's about how you talk to yourself. The internal dialogue running through your mind every day is the most powerful form of speech you'll ever use. If you constantly repeat thoughts like "I'm not ready" or "this is too hard," you shape your entire experience through fear. But if you consciously interrupt that voice, if you replace it with statements like "I can figure this out," or "this challenge is building me," you reclaim control. You become the narrator, not the prisoner, of your thoughts. In just 1 week, your speech patterns can begin to rewrite your identity, but only if you're intentional. Begin monitoring your words like you would your training or your diet. Journal them. Catch the patterns. Observe when you downplay yourself. Notice when you speak in past tense more than future focus. Then pivot, replace, realign, because you don't need to convince others you're changing. You need to convince yourself. And the fastest way to do that is through the daily, deliberate use of aligned language. The kind of language your highest self would nod in approval to. No one will clap for you on day one. No one will see the quiet battle you fight in the dark. But you will. You'll feel it when you resist the urge to sleep in. You'll feel it when you speak with power instead of apology. You'll feel it when your breath steadies in the middle of discomfort, and you keep going. This week is not about perfection. It's about proof. Proof that you no longer serve the weaker version of yourself. Proof that you can choose discipline over distraction. Proof that you don't need more time, you need more honesty. You need intensity. You need intention. 7 days, that's all. Not to impress the world, but to look in the mirror and no longer recognize the person staring back.